I got a little pop-up message on my screen that says, "You have been banned." Almost 20-year-old was talking to a 15-year-old. He then blocked me on everything. And right before he dismisses me from his office, he goes, "Oh, and the organization sent me all of your texts between you and Sam." Hi everyone, my name is Ada, and if you are new here, welcome to my channel, and if you are not, welcome back. So, a few weeks ago, I went on Instagram and I asked you guys what you wanted to see on this channel besides like life vlogs, basically vlogs, because that's what I've been doing. That's been my thing the past like 8 months-ish, with a little, few other videos sprinkled here and there. And the one response that I got, thanks, y'all really brought me down a peg. But the one response that I got asked for more story times, and I've been doing YouTube for a long time. I started YouTube way back in 2015, which was when story times were in their prime, with like Tana Mojo, Simply Nessa, YouTubers like that. Like, I grew up with Tana Mojo, and that is why I am a storytime lover. And I also used to do story times a lot on my old channel. So we're gonna bring that back for a day, and we're gonna do a good old-fashioned story time. Today we're going to be talking about some embarrassing date stories, some horrible date stories, my worst date stories. So I'm just gonna be getting ready while I share some embarrassing stories. And I don't know what order I'm gonna put them in yet, but I think I'm gonna go from least embarrassing to most embarrassing. Buckle in, because oh my gosh, one of these stories I know will have you on the edge of your seat. Grab a snack, grab a drink, get ready with me. This is probably gonna be a long one because I have nowhere to go, so I'm gonna take my sweet time. And let's dive in to my worst date stories. This first story takes place in April of 2022, so just last year. It hasn't even been a year. And this story is probably a common occurrence, which is kind of a sad thing, but I feel like a lot of other women and just people in general have gone through something like this. And in the moment, I was like really distraught about it because this was my first venture out into like the dating hookup world after like officially ending things with my first ex, because me and my first ex were like on and off for a good while until he eventually decided that he was like done for good. And then at that point I was like, okay, well, I can't keep trying to get him back. Like, Ada, stop embarrassing yourself. Like, now it's time to move on. And I figured it was the perfect opportunity to try to move on because school had just ended. I had just moved back to my hometown, which was like 30 minutes away from where I lived for school. And me and my first ex lived super close to one another, so we were constantly seeing each other. But now there was distance between us. I figured it would be easier to move on, get out there, meet new people, hang out with friends, stuff like that. Just move on in general, I guess. So I decided to finally re-download dating apps, and my app of choice was Hinge. I felt like I met the most genuine people on there, and at the time, I was looking for something more long-term because I'm just a very lovey-dovey person, and I love giving that love to one person and one person only. Like, I have so much love to give, and I'd love to bombard one person with it. I'm very much like a monogamous, long-term relationship type girly. I've recently been broadening my horizons and like learning to just have fun in other ways. But at the time, I downloaded Hinge, and it was my favorite app to use because I feel like people on there were looking for something similar to me, whereas like Tinder is used for a lot of hookups, and then I just didn't like Bumble. Like, Bumble was not my app of choice, but I did have it. But moral of the story is Hinge was the app that I was using at the time, and is where I eventually met this guy who we'll call Charlie. So Charlie was this really cute boy. He was like 6 foot, and he was like dreamy. And the first guy that I saw on a dating app after officially ending things with my ex, where I was like, oh my gosh, I need to match with this guy. I need it to happen. And guess what? We matched, and I was like ecstatic, over the moon. You know how that little giddy feeling you get when you match with someone you really want to? Yeah, that was me. So we started talking, and everything was going so well. He had such a good personality. His humor and my humor were very similar, so we were, bonding kind of fast. And I loved talking to him because he wasn't like a dry texter. I feel like a lot of men that I come across are dry texters. This man was not. And I need someone who's not going to be a dry texter, because obviously our first interactions are over text. So if our first interactions are dry and boring and bland, then my first impression is ruined. So you need to be somewhat of a good texter in order to push me through until we meet in person, because I have met some people who are amazing in person, but horrendous over text. And it really rubs me the wrong way because my first impression was already ruined. The only downside to talking to this boy is that he lived about an hour and a half away in Toronto. And obviously distance is a big thing at our age. Like, I don't own a car. Like, I drive my parents' cars. I don't always have access to that. He didn't have a car at all. He lived in student housing at the time. Nevertheless, we persevered because I really enjoyed talking to him and he was super cute. I'm like, why would I not keep going? And he seemed really into it. He had a great personality. His personality really came through over text. So we moved our conversation over to Snapchat and everything is still the same. I'm really enjoying it. I'm like constantly checking my phone. I have bad habits sometimes. Like when I'm really into something, I will obsess over it. It's the same with a boy I'm talking to. If I really enjoy talking to this person or I'm craving attention in that moment, I'll check my phone every 2 seconds because I keep my notifications off for social medias and stuff, and my phone is 99% of the time on Do Not Disturb, where only a few select people can go through until I turn that off or check my phone. And this boy was one of those people where I was checking my phone constantly. It was probably bad, but he answered fast, so I had a reason, okay? Don't come for me. I want to say we talked for about 2-3 weeks before we decided to meet up, and he texted me and he was like, hey, I think I'm gonna go to the club on like Friday or Saturday night. I can't remember what night it was. It was definitely one of those nights though. And he said, I would love if you could come. I know it's like far away. I know it's, you know, a lot to ask because I had to find transportation. I had to find a place to stay, blah, blah, blah. He's like, but I would love if you could come. It would be so much fun. My friends might be there. You can meet my friends. And because I really enjoyed talking to this boy and because I was a little horny, I was like, oh my god, yeah, like I'm gonna try my best. So this was actually gonna be my first time going clubbing, and we were going to one of the biggest clubs in Toronto. It's called Rebel, and I had so much fun. We'll get there. I get to his house around 8:30, and he comes out and he greets me, and he's in like this almost like black suit. Like he looks really fancy for a club. I mean, I really went hardcore and I wore heels. Rookie mistake. If you're going to a club, do not wear heels unless they're little kitten heels. I wore white 4-inch heels. But basically, once we met up at his place, we went upstairs. I put like my bags down. I freshened up a little bit. He finished getting ready, and then we took an Uber to like a game bar, like almost like an arcade bar. It was a bar, but they had like arcade games in the back, and they had like a little basketball net, and it was really nice in there. It was a vibe. But it was at this bar that we met up with his friends. It was 2 guys and 2 girls. I actually still talk to one of the girls from time to time. I really loved her. She was so sweet. Such like a hype girl, and I love her. She comments on my Instagram sometimes, and I try to comment on hers. But we decided to go from the bar to that girl's place so that the girls could get ready and then we could pray a little bit. Little did I know that her place was like a 30-minute walk from this bar, because someone said we were Ubering from the bar to her place, but then we decided to walk, and I was in heels. I didn't want to take my heels off because we were in downtown Toronto and I did not want to walk barefoot on the Toronto ground. I persevere. I walked the 30 minutes to her place, but we sit down for maybe like another hour, so I have time to recuperate. And we pray a little bit, we joke around, I get to know a little bit more about his friends, and it was a really good time. And then we decide to then Uber from her place to the club. I want to say it was around 10 p.m. I could have the timing all wrong, but the important thing is that we get ready at her place and then we Uber from her place to the club. We get to Rebel. I've never been to a club before, mind you. Rebel is huge. Rebel is so popular. It's by the water and the lines were long, but we somehow got a table or got like VIP, so we got in super fast because Charlie knew a guy and it was this guy's birthday, and the guy had like connections to Rebel, so he let us all come in with him. It was so nice of him. I don't think I ever saw that guy another time after we all got in. Like I was with Charlie and the girls most of the night. Once we get into the club, I'm like starstruck. It's huge. I think it's also used as a concert venue because it's big. And there are levels to this place. But the main floor, there's like bars on all sides. There's booths, tables, and the dance floor, and they have like this huge like light ring that like twists and turns. Long story short, we are at the club from about 10 p.m. until 1:30 a.m. I think they closed at 3, but Charlie and I were like tired by like 1 a.m. and we decided to just leave and go get food. And there was an A&W right around the corner of his house, and we went there and he paid for it. He paid for everything, which was super sweet in the moment. I'm gonna get there. But once we get our food, we decide to walk back to his place and eat there just so we can like change into comfier clothes. So we go back, we change, and then we're sitting on his bed and we're just eating and chatting. There's nothing I love more than a deep chat. And we had like a pretty deep conversation for like another 2 hours after that. I don't think we went to bed until like 5 a.m., like 4:35 a.m. And honestly, it was so nice. I like liked this guy even more than I did before I came because he was so nice. He was very sweet, paid for everything. Like he was such a good vibe. He danced, we made out on the dance floor. Like I was taller than him because obviously I wore 4-inch heels, so like dancing was kind of awkward, but we had such a good time, or at least I had a good time. I'm not going to speak for him, but I thought we both had a good time. We climbed into bed and we're like cuddling, and then we're both still kind of tipsy at this point. He's drunk, and you know, things get a little frisky. We have like a makeup session and it turns into a little bit more, and I am like completely naked at this point where I think he still has a shirt on, and we make out. I do something else. We make out again, and I could tell that he wanted to like do the full thing, have sex, and I'm open to it because he's hot and I'm also kind of horny and I'm also tipsy. So I was open to it, and nothing against Charlie because he was drunk, but he could not get hard. He could not stay hard. He would get hard for maybe like 2-3 seconds and then go limp again, and it's 100% because of the alcohol, I feel. And he kept trying to apologize. He's like, oh my god, like I'm so sorry, it's whiskey dick, it's whiskey dick. But I tried my best. He kept asking me for help, and so eventually I was like, okay, like let's just call it a night. Let's just get some sleep. We're both probably tired. Like it's just not gonna work out. So we made out a little bit more, and then I ended up falling asleep. And his bed was tiny, so I fell asleep like on his arm. I felt bad when I woke up in the morning because I'm sure his arm was exhausted, and he didn't sleep like at all because apparently he doesn't sleep very well with other people in his bed. So I don't really know why he said yes to having me over. Probably because he thought we were gonna get down and dirty, but it didn't happen. Not my fault though. All is well. I'm like happy. I had a really good time. I'm tired, but I'm happy, and the Uber takes me back. I get on the train, everything, I eventually arrive home. Now a few hours pass by, I have a nap because I'm exhausted, I shower, I freshen up because I looked like a disaster. And this is where the story gets embarrassing, bad. The actual date in and of itself was good, in my opinion, but I eventually text him, or he texts me something, and we start a conversation again on Snapchat, and then out of the blue he's like, hey, can you send me money for last night? I thought he was being sweet and paying for things, but I should have knew that it was too good to be true. So I sent him $20, I believe. My problem comes with what he did next, which, ladies, we've probably all been in a position like this at some point in our lives. But he blocks me. He blocked me. I tried to continue the conversation after I sent him money, and he did not open it until that night, so I was already asleep. When I woke up the next morning, I had been blocked on everything. Because I had a really good time, I had a completely different perception of the night than he did, I guess. I was not dealing well with this. I was constantly thinking about it. I texted all my friends. I was like, girl, you will not believe what just happened. I did all this last night and I still got blocked. I got blocked. And let me tell you, I was so distraught over this that I thought about it for maybe a good 5 days. Like, that's so embarrassing, Ada. Like, this is a story that's kind of embarrassing for me. But I was so like caught off guard because I thought the night went really well, and because I really liked him, and I thought he, you know, had a good time and kind of liked me back. I was really caught off guard, and so it really affected me longer than I should have. But I was a little bit crazy. So I am like checking his Instagram maybe 4 or 5 times a day, and there's like really no updates. Obviously not everyone posts, like an influencer, not everyone's gonna post every hour. So I eventually left his main account alone because he wasn't giving me anything. There was nothing I could like stalk or see. But I remember that he had a food account with one of his girlfriends, one of the ones that I met that night. And I eventually found it, and they were actively posting on there, so I could kind of like keep a tabs on him through there. So I was constantly checking this food account now, and I made the mistake of liking one of the posts on one of my alt accounts, and he eventually blocked me on that account because obviously he got the notification. Stupid Ada, you literally were so crazy. What was wrong with you? But that was the end of my social media stalking because I was officially blocked on everything, and at this point I sort of was like over the stalking, so I just gave up. But I was still in my feels. I was still kind of hurt. So what do? I go on Hinge, which was the only thing I was not blocked on. So I, being the crazy person I was at the time, because I was in my feels a little bit, I concoct a series of messages to be exact. To summarize the messages in a few sentences, I said something along the lines of, "You're an immature, stupid little brat who will never find true love or will never get pussy a day in his life ever again if you keep treating women like this." And I did say something about me being hurt. I don't know why I said that, but I sent that. He never responded, obviously, so I wasn't even sure if he saw it. At first I thought it was a glitch because I was like, I'm sure he unmatched me on Hinge, but the messages seem to have gone through, and I leave it for a few days and I start talking to new people, and then one day I go on Hinge. This is a real kicker. I go on Hinge and I am logged out, and I get a little pop-up message on my screen that says, "You have been banned." Sorry. See ya. Thanks for using Hinge, but bye. So yeah, I got banned from Hinge, and I am 99.9% sure it was because I sent those kind of nasty messages to this boy, and he probably reported me for harassment or something. And I was gobsmacked when I saw that I was banned from Hinge. I was like, okay, he's gonna unmatch me, maybe it's a glitch, he's not gonna read it, blah, blah, blah. But the last thing I thought was that I was gonna be banned from Hinge, and I'm still banned to this day. That is the most embarrassing or worst date story from my perspective, like for me. Like, I feel like a lot of people have gone through situations similar to this, but girl, like, I understand that I was in my feels and I was hurt, but did I have to check his Instagram like 10 times a day? Did I have to find his food Instagram? Did I have to constantly keep an eye on him? No. I was crazy. And the cherry on top of the cake was those messages that I sent on Hinge, and the cherry on top of that cherry was that I was banned. Okay, now we're getting on to the most embarrassing / worst date story from the male's perspective, because I swear to God, if this man was not the most embarrassed he's ever been at the end of this, then I guess it's just a man being a man, like male audacity, you know? But buckle up. This story is crazy, and every time I talk to someone, they're like, oh. So for this story, we have to go back in time 7 years to 2016. I was freshly in grade 10. I was freshly 15. And it's just any other day, any other school day. I am in class. I hang out with my friends at lunch. I have class with my friends. It's just a good old time. Grade 10, in my opinion, is the easiest year of high school, and I was probably still stressed because I used to really vie for academic validation. That was the way that I got through life, and if I got anything less than an 89% on an assignment or a test, I was distraught. But in the grand scheme of things, looking back on it, grade 10 was super easy. That's the point. On this particular day, however, we had an anti-bullying assembly. It was from a Canadian company. I will not say their name because I do not want to get sued, just in case they see this. But basically, this company toured the country and went to different high schools and maybe elementary schools and put on a little presentation about bullying, anti-bullying awareness, like loving yourselves, loving your neighbor, stuff like that. And on this particular day, they were coming to our school. And it was like a group of older teenage kids, like late teens, early 20s. And they shared their stories. They gave us like information about bullying and stuff like that. And it was like a good presentation. I remember liking it in the moment. And they even had a band. And the band, I think, is kind of well known now. They are called Valley. But back in 2016, when they performed at our little high school in our tiny little town, like no one really knew them. But I knew a lot of people that I went to high school with started liking them after that performance. So I sat with my friends and we watched the assembly, and honestly it was pretty enjoyable. They made it like kind of funny, but also got across the point that they were there to make. But there was this one guy who we're gonna call Sam. Sam was this tall guy. He wore glasses. He was like 6'2", 6'3", and all of my friends and I were like thirsting over him. We're like, oh my god, who is that guy? He's so cute. And Sam was like the funny one of the group. When he came on stage, he was the comedic relief basically. So we were like, oh my god, he's so cute, he's so funny, blah blah blah. And after the assembly finished, we learned that we could go on our lunch break and actually take pictures with the presenters and the band and talk to them a little bit. And my friends and I were like, oh my god, we need a picture with Sam. So we go back to class, we finish our period, and then we have lunch, and we decide to go back to the gym and talk to the people, but especially Sam. And we go, we take our picture. I have the picture somewhere. It's so embarrassing. I look completely different, but I was like this little shy kid, and I remember I was 15. And Sam in the story was 19, almost 20. So oh god, I can see the picture in my head, like it's so embarrassing. So I take a picture with Sam and we say our goodbyes. We're all like giddy as we get out into the hallway, my friends and I, and we go eat lunch and we go about the rest of our day. I get home and eat dinner and whatnot, say hi to my family, and it's closer to when I'm gonna go to bed because I had school the next day. But I somehow find Sam's Instagram, and this company, this organization that he worked for, had a strict policy where you could not follow or let students follow you on any social media. Their only interaction with you was supposed to be when you were at their school, presenting, taking pictures with them, answering questions afterwards. So I, for some reason, decide to try to follow him anyway, and so I click that request button and I wait. After I request him on my main account, I actually requested him on my makeup account that I had at the time, obviously, that I've already talked about a little. And he ends up accepting my request and follows me back on both accounts. And I'm like all giddy, I'm texting my friends, I'm like, oh my god, he followed me. Like, I was 15. I was over the moon. I had never been with a guy or really had a crush, like a major crush on a guy, but I thought Sam was so cute. So I'm texting my friends all giddy, like, oh my god, he followed me, oh my god, he let me follow him, blah blah blah. Little did I know that like 30 minutes after that, I was gonna open Instagram again and have a DM from Sam. And I remember exactly what he opened with. He opened with, how many accounts do you have? Winky face, like the semicolon bracket. When I tell you 15-year-old Ada was like pooping herself, I immediately like call, text my friends. I'm like, girlies, you will not believe what happened. Like, he not only followed me, he DM'd me. And we're all freaking out over text, over FaceTime. I decided to answer, obviously, because one, I thought this guy was the cutest guy, hottest guy I'd ever seen at the time. And I did know that he wasn't supposed to follow me or let me follow him. I remember them saying that at some point in the presentation, or maybe we asked for his Instagram at the thing when we were taking pictures and he said no. But I was like, oh, if he like followed me back and he's messaging me, like he's obviously okay with it. Like maybe he like got around it. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. So we start talking and we continue talking for like 2 weeks. Sorry, I had to put on my lashes and I just kept going and forgot that I was filming a video. So as I was saying, he asked me out on a date after like a week and a half, 2 weeks of talking over Instagram. And I think that's when we exchanged numbers, because I remember talking to him over iMessage. But I remember being so nervous because I was freshly 15. I'd never been on a date before, never even talked to to a guy before. This is the first guy I'd ever talked to, and I was excited but nervous, and I didn't really know what to expect. So I said yes, obviously, and we ended up meeting in the city that he was staying in at the time, which ironically is the city that I go to school in. He wanted us to bike from like the beginning of downtown all the way to the water, the harbor front. So there are blue bikes all around this city, and he rents some, and we ride down. I remember being so scared because obviously I was already nervous, but I was trying not to hit people while I was biking. I hadn't biked in a while, so I was a little rusty. But we make it to the waterfront, and we just sit there and we are talking, and it's really nice. And we sat by the water. I love being by water, so I was already enjoying it, but I remember being really nervous and uptight. And I remember like pulling out like my best jeans and like a little like button-up shirt, and I thought I looked so like cute. I look back and I'm like, you looked interesting. This is where it gets awkward because I wasn't really expecting anything. Like I wasn't really expecting to kiss or whatnot because I was not ready for that. I didn't even really know this guy, and because there was like this he was in sort of like a position of power. He was higher up than me because I looked up to him with like awe because he was part of this organization. He was traveling the country. Like that's something that I thought was super cool, and he literally presented at my school. Like anyone that presented at my school I already had like a respect for, because I could not imagine like getting up in front of the school and presenting. So the dynamic was off. The power dynamic was off. While we're walking through this mall, he keeps trying to like pull me closer and hold my hand. So he'll like put his arm around me and like pull me closer, and I was like a little weirded out, but I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to make it weird. So I just sort of let it happen, and eventually I would like pull away and he would pull me back in and pull away. And then at that point he was like on my left and he tried to hold my hand. I let him do it for like 30 seconds, and then I pulled my hand away, and then he looked at me and tried to grab it again, and I eventually just pulled my hand away, and I was like, I didn't say anything, I just pulled my hand away. I like pretended to like look at something, and I think he stopped after that. But it was at this point we were walking around the mall. This is maybe like 3 hours into our date that I texted my mom and asked her to come pick me up because I'm like, okay, I'm not enjoying this anymore. Like this is getting weird. Closer to when she came, I looked at him and I was like, oh my god, I have to go. I'm so sorry. Like family emergency. I said something like that, and he was like, oh yeah, no problem, blah blah blah. But I went home and I didn't really know how to feel. Like I had a good time, but I was also kind of weirded out from like him trying to like grab my hand, pull me in. I was uncomfortable. I should have said something, but I was also 15 and didn't know what to say. I'm also an incredibly shy and awkward person at first, so I really didn't want to say anything. I really didn't want to like make him feel bad. Ada, you need to stop like worrying about other people's feelings when it's affecting you. I forgot to mention, after we left the harbor front, but before we got to the mall, we were walking around downtown a little bit, and we actually walked by his hotel, and he kept talking about how like, oh, he wanted to bring me back there but couldn't because if he got found out he would get kicked off the tour, because obviously he wasn't supposed to be following any of the students, let alone taking one out on a date, when he was 19, almost 20, and I was 15. And I was like, oh, what do you want me to do about that? I obviously didn't say that, but I was thinking like, oh, why does he keep bringing this up? Like, what does he want me to do about that? Eventually he was like, oh, like, do you want to come back? Like, I think we can risk it. Like, everyone should be at church, like, blah, blah. I was like, no, like, I'm okay. Like, thank you, though. And he kept trying to bring me back, obviously, for some reason. But I was just like, no, no thanks. And then that's when we went to the mall and we walked around, and it got weird again. And I left. And I texted him and I was like, thank you for taking me out. I had a good time. And that was that. Fast forward a few days, I was hanging out with one of my best friends in the world. Her name is Abby. I have known her for like a decade at this point. And we are in her basement. I think we're playing like the Wii or something, or watching a movie. And I look on my phone and I look on Snapchat, and I see that Sam had posted a Snapchat, and it was of his dog. I knew it was his dog because he had talked about his dog so frequently that I knew what he looked like, and he showed me a picture. So I see the Snapchat, I see that it's his dog, and I'm like, Abby, like, look at this. Like, that's his dog. She's like, yeah. I'm like, well, that must mean that he's home. And they still had like 2 months of this tour left because they were going from like the West Coast all the way to the East Coast, so they still have like Quebec, Nova Scotia, like all those provinces. I'm like, well, why is he home? Like, that could only mean one thing. So I swipe up and I'm like, oh, is that your dog? He's like, yeah. So I ask him, why are you home? Like, don't you have a few months left of the tour? And he, I kid you not, says to me, oh, I got kicked off the tour because I was talking to you. Like, thanks a lot. I, at this point, start crying. I'm with Abby. She's like, what is going on? I show her the text on Snapchat. She's like, oh my god. We're shocked. I'm crying because obviously he's putting the blame on me. He basically says something along the lines of, I got kicked off the tour because of you. Because I was talking to you. Like, thanks a lot. This is your fault. And I'm like, oh my god. Like, I'm so sorry. I started apologizing. I don't know why. Obviously, I probably still would because I'm kind of like that. But 15-year-old Ada was like shocked. She didn't know what to do. I apologized and he's like, yeah, like, it is what it is. Just don't, I don't want to talk to you ever again. Like, thanks, blah, blah, blah. And then he texts me and he's like, oh, by the way, like, you might have to talk to your principal. You might get called down because they contacted your school. Like, my organization contacted your school. I'm like, oh, great. Here we go. So that was that. He then blocked me on everything, which I honestly don't blame him, but it was his fault, obviously. Like, I hope we all are aware and all have the same conclusion that it was his fault. This almost 20-year-old was talking to a 15-year-old. He knew what the risks were. He knew that he wasn't supposed to be talking to any of the students, following any of the students, let alone taking a student on a date and talking to that student for about a month. It was his fault. This was not in any way my fault, but I felt like it was because he made me think it was. He put all the blame on me. So this all happened on the weekend. The following Monday, when we went back to school, I was in culinary class. I remember this so vividly. I was in culinary class and the phone starts ringing and my heart kind of drops because I'm like, oh, what if it's for me? And my teacher goes and answers the phone, gets off the phone and is like, Ada, the principal would like to see you in his office. I'm like, oh, great. Here we go. So the culinary classroom is directly down the hallway from the main office, so it's just a straight walk. I take my sweet time with that walk. I walk slow down that hallway. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what is gonna happen, but I remember being so scared. So I go in, I say hi to the secretary. She's like, oh, he's in his office waiting for you. I go in. It's not only the main principal, but it's also the two vice principals. So it's the main principal standing and then the two vice principals are sitting down at like this roundish table and the principal's like, sit down. So I sit down and my principal turns to me and the first thing he says is, do you know this person named Sam? And I'm like, yes, I do. And he's like, have you been in contact with Sam? I'm like, yes. Because at this point I knew that the organization had contacted him, so I'm like, what's the point in lying? And my principal, once again, victim blaming, says something along the lines of, oh, like, you could have gotten hurt, like, you could have been a predator, like, how could you be so dumb, like, blah, 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 and goes off on this whole tangent about how it was wrong. My principal basically goes on this whole tangent about how it was wrong, and how I shouldn't have been talking to him, now I could have gotten hurt, now I could have been a predator, blah, 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 like, how could I be dumb, like, I need to learn from this, and I am on the verge of tears at this point, and the vice principals aren't really saying anything, they're just, like, nodding in approval. And right before he dismisses me from his office, he goes, oh, and the organization sent me all of your texts between you and Sam. I'm gonna send them to your mom. Like, just so you know, I am going to contact your mom after this and send her the texts. A few of the texts that Sam and I sent to each other were slightly risque. Nothing too crazy, but I was so distraught. That was really what broke it for me, like what broke the seal, and I started crying. Because just the thought of my principal, my Catholic school principal, and vice principals seeing these texts between this boy and I, and putting the blame on me for being dumb and naive and talking to this boy and getting him kicked off the tour, I walk out of the office and I immediately start crying. I don't even go straight back to class. I walk around the hallways and go to the bathroom just sobbing. And eventually, maybe like 10 minutes later, I get a call from my mom, and so I go to the front part of the school, and I'm still like kind of crying, and she calls me and she's like, hi honey, like I got a call from the principal, like I just wanted to let you know. Basically the principal said something to her like, oh, do you know your daughter has been talking to this boy? And my mom was like, yeah, I drove her to the date. And he's a little taken aback and he's like, okay, well, like I have the text, do you want them? Like, as a mother, you should take these because you should care about your child. Like, you should see these. And she, my mom, such a badass, goes, no, I don't need them. I trust my daughter, so you can fuck off, and hangs up. Hangs up on my principal. Like, and she tells me, she calls me right after she hangs up on him and tells me this. This day, from this day forward, I never trusted my principal ever again. And he kept trying to rekindle a relationship throughout the years. And I just did not let him. I was not having it because I'm like, you hurt me a lot. This little 15-year-old girl, you hurt her by putting the blame on her in this situation. She already felt bad enough because Sam was blaming her, but her own principal blaming her and making this whole situation a big deal. Like, everyone found out. Like, everyone in my grade, a lot of people in my grade found out about this whole situation. It was like public knowledge. With that being said, that is going to be the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed this story time. I'm so sorry. I haven't filmed a sit down chit chat video in forever, so I'm a little rusty, which is why I went on so many tangents. But I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you got ready with me, enjoyed a snack, enjoyed the stories. Yeah, especially that second story, it still gets me to this day. Sometimes I think about it, I'm like, damn, that actually happened. Anyways, if you did enjoy the video, please make sure to like and subscribe down below. All my social medias are always in the description: Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. It would mean the world to me if you went and followed me on those platforms as well. With that being said, this is going to be the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.